A billionaire's wife thought she had everything under control until her 6-year-old daughter vanished into a winter crowd for 12 seconds. Not minutes, not even half a minute, just long enough for a life to split in two. When she found her, the child wasn't crying. She was kneeling in the slush, hugging a homeless man outside a luxury watch boutique, like she'd known him her whole life. The crowd froze. A security guard reached for his radio. 2 NYPD officers pushed through the people. Then the homeless man turned his head, and a prison-style tattoo flashed on his neck. And the little girl looked up at her mother and said 5 words that should have gotten her dragged away. "Don't take him. He's mine." The mother had no idea who this man was, no reason to trust him, just a child clinging tighter, and a stranger's hands shaking like he was trying not to break. Security demanded he be removed. The police told the girl to step back. The billionaire's wife screamed, "Get her away from him!" But the homeless man whispered something so quietly, only she could hear it. Something that made her stop shouting mid-sentence. Because in that moment, she realized this wasn't a random act of kindness. It was recognition. She had 2 minutes before the police pulled the man off the sidewalk. If she made the wrong call, she'd lose her child's trust forever. If she made the right one, it would expose a truth her marriage couldn't survive. Stay with me, because what happens next will change how you judge a stranger in public and who actually deserves to be heard. The street looked like a holiday postcard that smelled like money. Melted snow made the sidewalks shine like polished glass. Storefronts glowed gold. Holiday music floated through cold air like the city was trying to convince itself it was warm. Downtown, dusk, shoulder-to-shoulder crowds. Nadine Kells moved through it, like the world bent around her. Not because she demanded it, because it did it automatically. Her coat was tailored. Her scarf was cashmere. Her wedding ring looked like a small, quiet planet made of diamonds. A bodyguard walked 6 steps behind her, pretending he didn't exist. Beside her bounced Lyra, 6 years old, bright pink snowsuit, mittens swinging like tiny flags. Lyra loved the lights, loved the music, loved the fake snow blasting from holiday machines like magic could be manufactured. She gasped at everything. "Mom, look! That one is shaped like a star!" "Yes, sweetheart," Nadine said, barely looking. Her phone buzzed. Elias. "Car's close. 2 minutes." Elias Kells didn't do crowds. He did satellites, boardrooms, silent penthouses. If he had to step outside, he wanted it clean and fast. Nadine looked down at her daughter. "Stay right beside me," she said. Not with fear, but with habit. Lyra nodded. Then a man dressed as a reindeer stumbled past, bells jingling. Lyra laughed, turned her head, and Nadine's grip loosened. 12 seconds. Nadine blinked at movement, then looked down and felt something colder than winter. Her hand was holding nothing. Her mouth opened. No sound came. Her eyes scanned left, right, over shoulders, past shopping bags, coats, laughter. "Lyra?" she said. Then louder. "Lyra!" The bodyguard stepped forward instantly, alert, but the crowd didn't notice. Crowds never notice until a crisis blocks them. Nadine pushed through bodies, ignoring irritation, elbows, muttered apologies. "Lyra!" Her heart slammed like it was trying to punch its way out. Then she saw her, just across the sidewalk, outside a luxury watch boutique that looked like a museum. Lyra was kneeling in the slush. Her pink snowsuit was dark at the knees, and she was hugging a homeless man, not gently, like she was trying to become part of him. The man sat against the glass, shoulders hunched, beard thick, coat layered and filthy. His posture looked crushed, like the city had been sitting on his spine for years. For 1 second, Nadine couldn't process what she was seeing. Her daughter was hugging a stranger, in public, in front of a luxury store. Her lungs forgot their job. "Lyra, get away from him!" Nadine shouted. Heads turned. A security guard stepped outside, already touching his radio. The bodyguard moved fast, but panic moves faster. Lyra didn't let go. She buried her face into the man's coat and held tighter. And then Nadine saw it. The man turned slightly. His scarf slipped, and on the side of his neck, sharp lines, harsh ink, a prison-style tattoo. Nadine froze. Not because of the tattoo, because she'd seen it before, years ago. In a photo Elias once showed her while explaining why he funded certain justice reform charities. A case, a scandal, a man blamed for something tied to Elias's company. Nadine's stomach dropped. The security guard spoke into his radio. 2 NYPD officers appeared, calm and heavy with authority. Lyra lifted her head. Her cheeks were wet, snow or tears. She looked straight at her mother. "Don't take him. He's mine." Nadine's brain rejected the sentence. Children don't cling like that without reason. The officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, is this your child?" "Yes," Nadine said quickly. "She's mine." "We need her to step away from him." Nadine reached for Lyra. Lyra flinched. Not from the homeless man, from her mother. That flinch hit Nadine harder than screaming ever could. "Lyra?" Nadine said, forcing calm into her voice. "Come here." Lyra shook her head. "He's cold." The homeless man finally spoke. Low, steady. "I'm not going to hurt her." His eyes were tired, not wild. The bodyguard leaned in. "Ma'am, we should move." Security said, "You can't sit here. You're scaring customers." The man looked at Nadine and whispered something only she heard. "You left the hospital alone." Nadine's blood turned to ice. Not a guess, not luck. A memory only one other person knew. "Who are you?" Nadine whispered. "My name is Tomas," he said, "and I've been trying to find you for 6 years." Phones lifted quietly. The officer said, "Sir, stand up." Tomas didn't move. "I don't want trouble," he said. "I just need 2 minutes." Lyra whispered, "Mom, he knows my song." Nadine blinked. "What?" "The sleepy song you sing when I'm scared. He hummed it. That song wasn't online. It wasn't famous. It was something Nadine made up in the dark." The officer repeated, "Stand up!" Tomas raised his hands slowly. The crowd recoiled like poverty was contagious. The officer asked Nadine, "Do you know this man?" Nadine hesitated, and in that hesitation, the world smelled blood. The bodyguard shifted his weight like a man preparing for violence. The security guard's hand hovered near his radio. The officers watched Nadine's face more than they watched Tomas, because in moments like this, people don't follow rules. They follow certainty. And Nadine, who had always been certain, wasn't. "Ma'am," the officer prompted, "do you know this man?" Nadine opened her mouth, closed it. The silence stretched just long enough to feel dangerous. She started, then stopped. Lyra looked up at her, eyes wide, trusting, confused. The kind of look that says, "Please don't lie to me." "I don't know him," Nadine finally said. It wasn't the truth. It wasn't a lie, either. It was a wall. The officer nodded slowly. "Then we need to separate your child from him." Nadine felt her throat tighten. "Lyra," she said softly, "come to me." Lyra shook her head again, harder. "He knows my song." Nadine swallowed. "Sweetheart, lots of people know songs." "No," Lyra said. "Not that one." The homeless man, Tomas, kept his hands where everyone could see them, open, still. He spoke gently, like every word might be mistaken for a threat. "She was scared," he said. "I hummed it." She stopped shaking. The officer's eyes narrowed. "How would you know her song?" Tomas didn't answer the officer. He looked at Nadine. The question wasn't about facts. It was about permission. Nadine felt something old wake up inside her, something she'd buried under diamonds and schedules and perfect photos. The night Lyra was born, the dark, the pain, the song, half words, half breath, something she made because silence was worse. "How do you know it?" Nadine asked Tomas. Tomas's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to Lyra, then back to Nadine. "I heard you sing it," he said. In a hospital room, 6 years ago. Nadine's heart stumbled. The crowd leaned in, phones lifted a little higher. The officer said, "Sir, if you're implying prior contact with this woman—" "I'm not implying," Tomas said quietly. "I'm remembering." Nadine felt dizzy. The memory came back in pieces. A hospital corridor that smelled like bleach. A nurse asking questions she couldn't answer. A man in scrubs near a supply closet, young, tired-eyed, quiet, watching her like he wanted to help but didn't know how. She'd forgotten him. Not because he wasn't important, because forgetting was easier. "You were alone," Tomas said. "You kept apologizing to people who weren't there." Nadine whispered, "Stop!" But he didn't stop. "You sang because the room was too quiet. You were trying not to fall apart." The officer stepped in sharply. "That's enough!" But Nadine raised her hand. "Wait!" The officer hesitated. Cameras mattered. So did money. Nadine looked at Tomas like he was a ghost who had learned how to breathe. "You said I left alone," she whispered. "How do you know that?" Tomas's voice was steady, but his hands shook from cold. "Because I walked you to the exit. You didn't have a ride. You said you'd figure it out." Nadine remembered. Not clearly, but emotionally. The feeling of being cut loose. "Who else was there?" she asked. "No one," Tomas said. "Not when you needed someone." The officer checked his watch. "Ma'am, we can't let this go on." "1 minute," Nadine said again. Her voice carried weight. The officer frowned. "Ma'am, 1 minute," she repeated. She crouched in front of Lyra. "Sweetheart," she said, "look at me." Lyra's eyes flickered but stayed on Tomas. "Look at me," Nadine said again. Lyra finally did. "Did he hurt you?" Nadine asked. "Did he touch you in a bad way?" Lyra shook her head. "No, he gave me his scarf." She touched the rough fabric around her neck. "He said my ears were cold." Nadine almost broke. Lyra whispered, "He smells like outside." Nadine pressed her lips together. A child's honesty is brutal. She stood slowly and looked at Tomas. "Why are you really here?" she asked. Tomas took a breath like it hurt. "Because I saw her," he said, "and I knew who she was." The officer snapped, "You can't know that!" Tomas didn't argue. He just said, "She has your eyes." Nadine's chest tightened. The officer said, "Ma'am, we're separating them." Nadine looked down at Lyra clinging to Tomas's coat like it was the last solid thing in a moving world. She looked at the tattoo on Tomas's neck again. She remembered a photograph Elias had shown her years ago. A headline, a scapegoat. A story that made a problem disappear. "Give me 60 seconds, Nadine said. The officer hesitated, then nodded once. 60. Nadine turned to Tomas. "Say whatever you came to say," she whispered. "Fast." Tomas swallowed. "I didn't come for money," he said. "I didn't come for revenge." "Then why?" Nadine asked. "Because I took the fall," Tomas said. "And I couldn't die without telling you why." Nadine froze. "For what?" she whispered. "For the fire." The word hit her like a shove. 6 years ago, a lab, Elias's company, an accident. One man arrested, case closed. Nadine stared at Tomas. "That was you?" Tomas nodded. "They needed someone," he said. "Someone without lawyers. Someone easy." "You're saying Elias—" "I'm saying he knew," Tomas said. "And he let it happen." Nadine felt the ground tilt. Lyra looked up. "Why would he do that?" Nadine's voice cracked. "Because some people protect themselves first." The officer stepped forward. "Time's up." Lyra suddenly cried, "No!" She wrapped herself around Tomas's waist. The officer reached for her. Nadine grabbed his wrist. "Don't touch her," Nadine said. Her voice was calm in a way that scared people. The officer paused. Nadine looked at Tomas. "If you're lying," she said quietly, "I will ruin you." Tomas nodded. "I'm not." Nadine's mind raced. If Tomas was right, her marriage was built on rot. If Tomas was right, her daughter was living inside a lie. "Officer," Nadine said,
He hasn't harmed my child. I want him to come with me, voluntarily, to a warm place to talk." The officer frowned. "Ma'am, if he refuses, you can take him," Nadine said. "But he's not running." Tomas looked at her like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Lyra whispered, "You won't disappear?" "Not today," Tomas said. Nadine held out her hand. "Come." He stared at it like it might vanish. Then he took it. His hand was cold. "Careful." Lyra walked between them, holding both their hands like she was connecting two broken wires. The crowd watched like they'd seen something illegal. And in Nadine's world, it was. Because in her world, the truly forbidden thing wasn't crime, it was truth.
They stepped into the boutique's entry area. Warm air hit like a wave. The security guard looked like he wanted to argue, but Nadine's name carried weight. They moved to a quiet corner. The bodyguard stayed close, tense. Lyra climbed onto a bench, still gripping Tomas's sleeve. Nadine faced Tomas. "Start at the beginning," she said. "Don't leave anything out." Tomas nodded. "I worked nights," he said. "Transport, supplies, cleaning." Nadine's jaw tightened. "You came in alone," Tomas continued. "You were scared. You had bruises you tried to hide." Lyra looked up sharply. "Mom?" Nadine didn't answer. "You asked the nurse not to call your husband," Tomas said. "You said, he can't know." Nadine closed her eyes. Tomas swallowed. "Later, he arrived. Not worried, angry," Nadine whispered. "What did he say?" "He said, 'This is going to cost me.'" Lyra frowned. "That's not nice." Tomas nodded. "No, it wasn't." "Then the fire happened," Tomas said. "People got hurt. They needed someone," Nadine whispered. "And you were there." "They made sure I was," Tomas said. "You're saying Elias did this?" Nadine said. "I'm saying he benefited," Tomas replied. "And he never corrected it." Lyra looked between them. "Are you my dad?" Silence. Tomas didn't grab the moment. He looked at Nadine, letting her choose. Nadine's eyes filled with tears she hated. "I don't know," she whispered. Tomas nodded. "I never asked for anything," he said. "I just didn't want to die invisible." Nadine stared at him, and she realized the story wasn't about a homeless man. It was about who gets erased. "We're doing a DNA test," Nadine said suddenly. "Tonight. Private. Legal." The bodyguard flinched. "Ma'am, Elias will learn the truth like everyone else," Nadine said. Lyra asked, "Will he disappear?" Tomas said, "Not if your mom doesn't let them erase me again." Nadine took off her scarf and wrapped it around Tomas's neck. Not to hide him, to warm him. "Let's go," she said. And as they stepped back into the winter evening, cold blue air, warm gold behind them, Nadine understood something she'd avoided for years. A lie can live comfortably in a penthouse, but truth always finds a sidewalk, especially when a child is brave enough to hug it in public. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that truth can show up anywhere, even on a cold sidewalk.